Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode. Today on the bench, we've got a really interesting piece of gear here. We've got a dart gun, pneumatically charged. We're going to take this thing apart and see what makes it tick. First, let's do a quick safety check. Make sure that we don't have any live ammo on the bench. What's interesting about this particular ammunition is that it's inert on its own, that it doesn't have, has nothing, there's nothing about this that can, there's no way to ignite this, or there's no way to send this. This has no propellant. It is just a projectile, which makes it kind of cool. What we're going to take a look at today is exactly how this thing ticks. And we're going to take the side plate off of this thing and check out what goes on the inside. But what we have here is a way to insert a projectile. We have a muzzle loading, pneumatically charged gun. And when this is what I can imagine, what we're going to find is a spring and a plunger, our trigger, and a sear in here. And that when this is pulled, that plunger falls. And what it's going to do is push a bunch of air right through the side of this needle on the inside. This is more like a syringe. That compressed air charge is going to fill this cavity inside of the dart and send this dart out the barrel, down the bore, and out the front. Now, there's no rifling to index on the inside of here. So this is a sort of short, what I would consider definitely a short range weapon, definitely non-lethal short range device. Let's get the side plate off this thing and check it out. Okay, so this thing is actually pretty cool. Let's take this side plate off to the side. Make sure stuff doesn't go springing and sprung and all over the place. Here's the side plate. What we have a trigger, and we sort of got a trigger disconnect here. This is the actual trigger, and then this is kind of like a sear, so to speak. But we've got we've got a barrel bushing up front, and then our trigger sort of just floats inside a channel here, and then our fire control group all comes out in one piece. What we got to make sure of is that we don't lose the spring off of the top of that. But this barrel assembly slips off, right? And what we can see the vents in the back. And I was incorrect. So I wasn't wrong. Turns out I was just mistaken. So you can see down here, this needle is actually just a guide rod. It's just a guide rod for the projectile. And all of the air that goes in the back here is not channeled into this empty cavity. It's actually just channeled into the empty cavity. That's the barrel. I mean, this is really primitive as far as muzzle loader design goes. So what we have is a spring. And then as this gets pulled back, this cocks against it, right? So we can see here, let me refocus this. Let's bring in the zoom. Let's bring in the zoom and let's adjust the focus here for what we're looking at. So as this thing gets cocked, as it gets pulled back, that spring on the top catches inside of that. So this sear is holding this whole thing captive, right? And then once we pull the trigger, when the trigger comes back, this trigger comes back and it rides inside of this channel. It bumps the bottom of this, and that is actually what releases the plunger and the whole spring assembly. The whole spring assembly goes forward. Now we've got some interesting sort of like a Vaseline or some kind of petroleum, some kind of grease on the outside of here to make sure that we've got, so that we can really seal this up. But this is disassembled as far as we need to disassemble it. If we wanted to take this down further, what we'd have to do is there's a pin here on this side. We had to this cocking lever yeah, this reciprocating cocking lever would have to be detached so that we could properly remove the sear, the mainspring, and get this whole thing out of the way. But quite a volume of air here. If we really wanted to sort of increase the chooch factor here, what we'd have to do is we had to use a larger spring, and sort of increase the volume of air. So it's a pretty interesting assembly, and also pretty inexpensive. What we have here is we've got a bunch of ABS plastic, and you can see when we look at on the back side of here, we can see that this is actually the molds for this are looking really good. They're pretty new, but this is a thermoset plastic, so it sets one time, and we cannot remelt this and have it we cannot melt this back down and then have it set again. This is a one-time thermoset deal, and then we've sort of got some kind of a raised area. It's supposed to look like a lens, but it's not. So these are pretty cool. And actually this the other side of this buckhorn, there's sort of a buckhorn sight. See if I can show you what I'm talking about. We got sort of a buckhorn sight on top. That's actually a spot for some spare ammunition. We don't really have sights on this. This is more of a shoot. This is more of a point and shoot. But I think it's actually a pretty cool design for such a small sort of Derringer size. Definitely concealable. I'm surprised I've checked on the market. There's nobody really that's making any Kydex, any real holsters for this thing yet. But we're gonna get there. I think the popularity of this is really gonna take off, especially because it's relatively inexpensive, and I think they're actually fairly decent. As far as self-defense context is concerned, this isn't really something that I think the self-defense community is going to take seriously. And that spring just went sprung and all over the place. Isn't something I don't think the self-defense community is going to take it seriously. I can't necessarily say that I blame them. I think we can attribute that mostly to ammunition. I think having a single shot anything today in the context of self-defense is just not realistic. I don't think it's going to work out. So yeah, I don't think that's really that great of an idea. But there we go. So we got this thing sort of put back together. But what I wanted to talk about, I brought this thing out here because I wanted to actually talk about that this kind of thing is really where the conversation about gun safety can start. A lot of times we have toys that are designed to look like tools, and tools that are designed to look like toys, and then the waters can get kind of muddy there if you let them. But I think something that a lot of parents could benefit from this is actually using this to start that discussion about, hey, when we're operating this, our finger off the trigger, when it's loaded, and having conversations about, pointing it in a safe, making sure that's pointed in a safe direction, keeping our finger off the trigger. There's no reason why we can't teach our kids a little bit of trigger finger discipline, even though it's just a dart gun. It's still a good idea. But we'll put this thing back together. We'll have ourselves a good old little dart fight later. But I thought you guys would think this was pretty cool. I thought it was cool. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. If you liked the video, See you soon.